Good evening and welcome to Afriplusnews channel. Tonight, we are diving into a statement that has sent shockwaves across Kenya and the wider African continent. During an address to Kenyans in Doha, President William Ruto openly admitted that the government is now carrying out electricity rationing across the country during evening hours. This revelation raises serious concerns about leadership, preparedness, and the everyday reality that millions of citizens are forced to endure. Stay with us to the end as we unpack what this truly means for Kenya's future. And before we begin, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Afriplusnews channel for more relevant and important updates like this one. President Ruto revealed that between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., the government has been shutting off electricity in some areas so that other regions can have power. He said clearly that Kenya does not have enough energy to supply everyone during peak hours. This is not an accidental outage or a technical glitch. This is a deliberate, structured decision to ration electricity in a country that markets itself as a regional economic hub. How do you feel knowing that in 2025, one of Africa's most technologically ambitious nations is now officially rationing power?
Kenyan President William Ruto has confirmed that the country is implementing deliberate daily power rationing, marking the first official acknowledgement of the load shedding. This comes as Kenyans experience increasing blackouts in recent days, fueling frustration and speculation over what's really happening. Speaking during a meeting with Kenyans living in Doha, Qatar, President Ruto said the load shedding is being implemented due to technical faults and routine maintenance. Ruto revealed that between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. each day, power supply is intentionally shut off in some areas to prevent a collapse of the national grid due to insufficient electricity supply. Kenya's current generation capacity stands at approximately 2,316 megawatts, which President Ruto described as the highest in 5 years, but still inadequate for the country's population of nearly 60 million. Peak demand hit a record 2,412 megawatts in October 2025. This shortfall forces the state-owned utility company Kenya Power to implement rolling blackouts during the evening peak hours to stabilize the system. The crisis could severely impact Kenya's economic ambitions. President Ruto disclosed that plans for mega foreign investments are stalled because a single investment facility would require nearly half of the nation's entire power output. Underscoring the scale of the infrastructural challenge, the Kenyan president said, "For us to operate one data center, we would have to shut down half of the country." He further emphasized that Kenya needs a minimum of 10,000 megawatts to industrialize. This requires an investment of 1.2 trillion Kenyan shillings, the equivalent of 10 billion US dollars. A primary cause of the crisis is a freeze on new power purchase agreements, PPAs, since 2018, which has halted the addition of significant new generation capacity despite surging demand. Consequently, Kenya has become increasingly dependent on electricity imports from neighbors like Ethiopia. In response, the Kenyan government has launched a plan to expand capacity, focusing on projects like geothermal development and the construction of megadams across the country.
If we have to engage in manufacturing, we need minimum 10,000 megawatts of energy. And we need it like yesterday. Today, in Kenya, jioni between 5 and 10 p.m., we have to do load shedding. We have to shut off some areas to be able to power other areas because our energy aitoshi.
Does this sound like a government in control, or a government that has failed to plan for its own people? The president further stated that Kenya's power generation capacity stands at around 2,300 megawatts, even though national demand is now surpassing that figure, especially during the evening peak. He also acknowledged that while Kenya's installed capacity is often quoted as over 3,200 megawatts, the actual usable or dependable capacity is far lower. This widening gap between supply and demand is the direct reason behind evening load shedding. The question now becomes, why has this gap been allowed to grow unchecked for so long? Should Kenyans accept this as an unavoidable crisis, or is this a sign of deeper mismanagement at the highest levels of government? One of the most shocking points in Ruto's speech was his comment about data centers. He claimed that constructing a large-scale data center could require up to 1,000 megawatts, nearly half of Kenya's active generation capacity. He even joked that such a project would require shutting down half the country to keep it running. Analysts have already disputed this figure, suggesting it is exaggerated. But even if exaggerated, what does it reveal about the government's preparedness for Kenya's digital ambitions? Can a country that cannot keep the lights on realistically position itself as a global digital hub? And more importantly, why would a leader choose to highlight such an extreme example instead of presenting a clear and credible path toward expanding energy security? Ruto then mentioned that Kenya needs at least cash 1.2 trillion to expand its generation capacity to a target of 10,000 megawatts, a massive jump from today's reality. But this raises even more questions. If this level of investment is truly necessary and urgent, why is it only being discussed now, after the problem has already exploded? Where has long-term planning been? And why should ordinary Kenyan taxpayers be left to carry the burden of leadership failures that have built up over decades?
President William Ruto has now revealed that due to Kenya's power supply being higher than the demand, the government has now been forced to do what is called load shedding, basically switching off power in some areas and leaving it on in other areas.
Jioni between 5 and 10 p.m. we have to do load.
Why he says that Kenya currently has a total power supply of 2,300 megawatts, and he was talking about setting up data centers that need 1,000 megawatts to be set up. So he says that if Kenya dares to set that up, then that would mean half of the country would not get power supply. Now, Kenya aims to have a total power supply of 10,000 megawatts, but President Ruto now says that the country needs an investment of 1.2 trillion shillings to achieve that.
Shortly after Ruto's statement went viral, government officials attempted to soften the blow. They claimed that Kenya has enough power overall, insisting that the real problem is the absence of spinning reserve, meaning there is no standby backup generation that can immediately supply power when renewable sources fluctuate. They also blamed aging infrastructure and unpredictable weather patterns. But how convincing is this explanation to the millions of people who experience blackouts every evening? Is this a genuine attempt at transparency, or simply a strategic public relations response designed to shift attention away from political responsibility? This crisis forces a deeper conversation about governance and accountability. Load shedding is not only a technical matter, it is a reflection of national priorities. Why has Kenya not invested aggressively in energy expansion earlier, knowing well that its population is growing, industries are expanding, and international tech companies require stable electricity? Why is the narrative now shifting toward crisis control instead of proactive planning? When a government begins rationing electricity, is it not a sign that the leadership has fallen behind the needs of its own citizens? As Kenya moves forward, its citizens must ask whether this pattern represents a temporary challenge or a long-term failure of foresight. How much longer must Africans endure inadequate infrastructure, even as leaders promise global competitiveness and economic transformation? When basic necessities become luxuries, can the people truly trust the system meant to protect them? This brings us to the heart of the matter. Electricity is not a privilege. It is the foundation of education, healthcare, business, security, and daily survival. When it becomes rationed, every other sector bleeds. And if rationing has now become normalized, what does that say about the future? Thank you for staying with us. This issue affects millions, and your voice matters. Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments section. Do you believe this energy crisis exposes deeper governance failures? Or do you think the government is doing all it can under difficult circumstances? Your opinion helps shape the national debate, and we want to hear from you. If you appreciate our in-depth reporting and analysis, please consider supporting us by joining our channel membership or sending us a super thanks. Your support enables us to continue producing high-quality journalism that holds leaders accountable and amplifies the voices of ordinary citizens. Thank you for watching Afriplus News Channel. Stay informed, stay engaged, and see you in our next analysis. Disclaimer: this analysis is based on statements made publicly by President William Ruto and information reported by reputable media outlets. The purpose of this video is to provide informed commentary and analysis for educational and journalistic purposes. Afriplus News Channel does not promote hate, harassment, or misinformation, and all viewers are encouraged to engage respectful,